Welcome everyone to tonight's Facebook Live. I'm going to be basically covering how optimizing your microbiome can help you get more energy, sleep better, and feel better. One of the things that I want to do tonight is I actually want to go into the microbiome, explain, what it is. I know there's some people that have recently joined who are not really too familiar with the word microbiome. So part of today's training is basically to help you understand what exactly is it that, what's the microbiome, right? What does it mean? What does that word mean? What does it entail? And how does that apply to getting more energy, sleeping better, and feeling better? So here's what I want to start out with tonight. So tonight, what I want to do is I want to share with you a little bit about my story as far as where I started, what are some of the things that I've been through, and I want to give you a really good visual so that you understand what is it exactly that I do. How is it that I'm helping people who have been experiencing a lot of these same things that I went through, where they're tired all the time, and even though they're tired all the time, they when it's time to go to bed, they have a hard time falling asleep. Maybe you're getting 3 to 4 hours of sleep, tossing and turning all night, and then you wake up not feeling well rested with brain fog, and it's just basically a miserable way of living. This is basically what I experienced, and I want to show you how optimizing my microbiome was basically the answer that I was looking for, that I just could not find anywhere else. So here's basically where it all starts. So I'm gonna share my screen first of all, and for anyone who is brand new, listening and watching some of my training videos, this is basically one of the illustrations that truly helped me the most when it comes to understanding what was it that was going on. So here's basically my story. What happened to me was I was basically going through all of these, experiences where, tired all the time, brain fog. And a lot of those, I thought at first that I was just aging. Like literally, I'm like, I don't have as much energy. And I was 28 years old at the time. And that's what I thought. I was like, well, maybe I'm just aging. Maybe this is just, what happens when you age. You don't have the same energy level. So I started to chalk off some of these, symptoms as just age. But what really made me worry more than anything was it was a day where I jumped in the shower and I was just lathering my hair, and then all of a sudden I started to feel this texture in my hands, and I'm like, what? I open up my eyes and then I look down and I see hair all over my hands, and all of a sudden I'm like, whoa. Like I started looking around, there's hair all over the bathtub, there's hair all over the shower curtains, and that's when I realized this is not normal hair loss. And that's when I worried that, there was something else that was wrong. Something else was going on that was definitely not normal. So this is when I started to look into health, and my epiphany came when I started to research gut health. And the reason why this was such an epiphany for me was because I was a beer brewer. That's my background. And as a beer brewer, when I heard that 80% of your immune system is your gut health, a light bulb went off, because when people say that 80% of your immune system is your gut health, they're talking about probiotics. They're talking about the gut flora that lives in your gut, which is probiotics, which is yeast and bacteria. This is when I realized, wait a second, probiotics, this is what we use to make fermented foods and beverages like beer, wine, kombucha, sauerkraut, kimchi, yogurt, right? That was my epiphany when I realized 80% of your immune system is in your gut, right? So the illustration that really helped me understand this was when I understood that our health is very much exactly the same like the health of a tree, where your gut is basically just like the root system of a tree. 80% of the immune system of a tree is at the root system. And so what makes our bodies healthy, what makes a tree healthy, plants healthy, is the same things that I was learning when I was brewing beer, which is basically you need to water, right, your tree, you need good quality water, you need minerals in the soil, you need the proper pH, you need the proper temperature, and that basically determines what kind of probiotics live, in your gut as well as at the root system of a tree, right? And we also need vitamin D. We need sunshine, right? So when I saw this diagram, all of a sudden I'm like, that I know that many people watching this, like maybe you don't understand this the way that I do, but this is because, with my brewing background, this is when this made sense to me. Because what happens is when you have a tree and you have leaves where, the leaves begin to get brown, they turn brown or they have little holes, the leaves basically begin to fall off, right? The problem is not at the leaf. The problem is at the root. That's where the expression finding the root cause comes from, is what's going on in the root of the tree, right? And so in our case, right, when I saw my hair falling off, I'm thinking, wait a second, the problem is not here at my scalp, at the hair, it's at the root, meaning in the gut. And so I started researching, okay, what can be going on in my gut? And so what can be going on in your gut is that you don't have the right probiotics, or you have potentially some sort of bad bacteria. And I'm using the word bad bacteria as an umbrella to include all sorts of things from parasites, virus, yeast, mold, fungus and things like that. And so for me, one of the things that that kind of was one of those light bulb moments was when I read that, hey, if you're experiencing things like constipation, gas, bloating, things like that, it is likely that you have yeast overgrowth. Okay, so again, as a brewer, right, this is what went through my head. I'm like, wait a second, I brew beer using yeast. So when I heard that I may potentially have yeast overgrowth, this is when things started to just make sense. Where I'm like, wait a second, this is what gut health is. It's probiotics. It's understanding the little bacteria and things like that live in your gut, right? So when I heard that I had yeast overgrowth, one of the things that I realized was that the yeast that had colonized in my gut was not a good type of yeast, right? To brew beer, we use a good type of yeast. It's a probiotic. It's called brewer's yeast. It makes vitamins, like B12 is one of the vitamins that are made by brewer's yeast. When people say you have yeast overgrowth, referring to a bad strain, right? The kind of yeast that you don't want in your gut, they're referring to yeast candida, yeast albicans, and there's, thousands of these different strains that can be potentially bad. But at any rate, what made sense to me, okay, and this is what separates my programs and everything that I teach from everyone else, is that I wasn't thinking just about the bacteria, the probiotics in the gut. I was thinking about the entire environment. Okay, that's what the microbiome is. So whenever I use the word microbiome, I am essentially referring to the entire environment, right? So your gut, right? The soil, if you want to think of it that way, the amount of water, minerals, pH, temperature, right? In the case of, nature, other things that would include, be included as part of, nature's microbiome is the diversity of other animals, right? It's like if you have a tree, right? If there's grass, all of that plays a role, right? You can have a little butterfly, right? That will play a role, right? You have a cow, right? That will play a role, right? Cow, poops, fertilizes the soil. All of that is part of the microbiome. And just like it happens in nature, our guts also need diversity. They also need a certain type of environment in order for that environment to be conducive to actually growing probiotics. And so what started to happen was that when I started to research this, and I went to see doctors, and basically I was getting no answers. I started to research, and whatever I found on that side was just not making sense. Okay, I was told that I was going to have to take hormones for the rest of my life, and for me, I wanted to know, why isn't my body producing hormones? And again, as a brewer, what I understood was that probiotics are what digest food for us. Probiotics are what makes vitamins and hormones for us. And so I started thinking about why is my gut not producing hormones, not producing vitamins? Why am I becoming nutrient deficient? Okay. All of these things started to make sense. And so what I started to realize was that what I needed to do wasn't just a change of diet. It wasn't just to take a supplement. I needed to restructure my entire microbiome. And so I want to show you, I want to give you a visual as far as what that looks like, because there's a lot of people that, they find the website, they find the group, and they want to get more energy, they want to, maybe clear their brain fog, they want to sleep better. And oftentimes, they think that maybe making a change to their diet or taking some sort of supplement is going to help them. And there's a lot more to it than that. And so I want to show you what that looks like so that you understand what is it exactly that I do, how is it that I'm helping people. If you go to our videos in the units tab inside of the group, right, I walk you through a process step by step. And you can also see some success stories of people that have actually followed what I teach, who started with no energy and now they're experiencing, increases in energy. They're sleeping better, no more brain fog. People who maybe have experienced, dizziness or, that weakness kind of feeling, all of that is starting to go away because I am walking them through this process of basically optimizing the microbiome, which again, it's not just about probiotics, but it's the entire environment. Okay, so I'm going to come back to this diagram here in a bit, but I want to share with you next a couple of videos here. And while I do that, if you're watching live or if you're watching the replay, let me know if what I've shared so far is making sense, because this is what I'm going to show you next is really going to help you see this in a different way that I haven't really shared, not in this perspective. And so I hope that this actually helps clarify a lot of things that I talk about. So, all right. So let me know if you guys can see my screen. I'm going to share a video. And okay. So this video that I'm about to share with you is, and I recommend that you guys watch, look for this video. It's called Ray Archuleta, PhD presenting at Nobel Conference 54. You can look up the Ray the Soil Guy is how I came across this. But basically what this is going to demonstrate is the difference between conventional farming, what it does to the soil, and regenerative farming practices, which is basically what I recommend you look at when it comes to sourcing out the foods that you eat, right? This is one of the pillars. This is one of the things that I teach inside of my program, is understanding where your food comes from, because here's what I want you to get out of what you're about to watch. Okay, the diagram that I just shared with you, where I compared our gut being just like the root system of a tree, the soil, okay, the health of the soil is basically the equivalent of the health of your gut. And so this test is going to basically compare soil that is in a conventional type of farming practice. Basically conventional meaning that they don't exactly use good quality water, they don't exactly mineralize the soil, probably uses pesticides, herbicides, all sorts of chemicals and things like that, versus regenerative farming practices where they do mineralize the soil, they do care about the pH of the soil, they do care about the temperature of the soil, right? And so this is basically what I want you to see and understand. So as I explained this, let me play the video. And so basically what he's going to do is demonstrate, compare these two types of soils, and he's just going to put him in, drop him into these, containers with water. And what he's trying to show is what happens to soil when it's filled with chemicals, okay, when it's filled with herbicides, pesticides, when it's not treated the way that it's meant to be treated, okay? So, so you can see here, as he starts to drop it, you can see on the left side, the soil basically just begins to dissolve. And essentially, I'm going to show you another video that explains this a little bit better, but basically this is what happens to your gut when you eat conventional foods. Okay, and this is basically what I am trying to do and help people is you got to think of your gut as being right now, like if you're having a hard time digesting food, if you get gas, bloating, constipation, if your body's not producing enough hormones, whether it's melatonin, the sleeping hormone, serotonin, dopamine, which are the feel-good, happy hormones. So if you're feeling like depression or anxiety, all of this, a lot of it is gut health. And it basically starts out here. So if your gut has this going on, what I do when I say I optimize your microbiome is basically I help people fix their microbiome, fix their environment so that it's more along the sides of the the right side here. So let me see if I can find this part. So one of the things that he shares, and again, I'm not going to go through the entire video, but it's important to understand what regenerative farming does for the environment, because essentially what you find people doing is through regenerative farming practices, what farmers are basically able to do is take an environment like this where it's desert-like and basically turn it into a place full of vegetation by adding cattle to it and basically following these regenerative farming practices. And there's a couple maps where they show the temperature of different places on Earth, because that have been going up due to conventional farming practices that are essentially destroying the environment. And so I'm not going to go too deep into that part of this, but I highly recommend that you do this. And the only reason why I share about this is because I think that it's important to understand this for two reasons. So okay, so here's the map. Right, so it's showing like how desert-like our planet is becoming because of conventional farming practices. So the reason why I feel this is important to share and understand is because if you're experiencing all of these gut issues, your diet, your food source is the number one problem, which means two things. Number one, you're supporting this, okay, the bad stuff. You're supporting the, desertification, if that's even a word, the loss of, life-giving kind of thing. When you start to switch your diet into a regenerative farming practice, food sources, not only is that better for the environment, but that's what helped me. That's what's helping the people inside of the group. Okay, so before I move on, I want to read off from Genesis chapter 3, verse 17 says, to the men he said, because you listened to your wife and ate from the tree of which I have forbidden you to eat, cursed be the ground because of you. In toil shall you eat its yield all the days of your life. Thorns and thistles shall it bring forth to you as you eat of the plants of the field. By the sweat of your face shall you get bread to eat until you return to the ground from which you were taken, for you are dirt, and to dirt you shall return. So when I read, okay, this passage, this is basically, to me, it's just saying that, hey, this is what we're made of. Okay, we're the same thing. Okay, the analogy that I just gave you, like just like the tree, we're made from the same dirt. We're made from the same bacteria, the same probiotics that live, that will create life, right, out in the environment. And so if you can turn a desert-like place like this and fill it with vegetation and life, that's what optimizing your microbiome is. Okay, that's one of the best ways that I can describe it. Now, let me share another video so that you can understand a little bit more about the differences in these soils. So this is another farmer that follows regenerative farming practices. And what he's going to demonstrate is the difference between his neighbor, right? He picked up dirt, I think like 25 feet apart, away from his own, place. And number one, you can see the difference in the color of the soil. What you may not be able to see is the difference on, the nutrient levels, right? Good quality water, minerals, right? The pH, the amount of microorganisms that are healthy in this darker soil is night and day difference. Okay. And so these two soils are basically what I think of, like people that are like, okay, when I first started my journey, my gut was essentially the lighter soil. It was full of chemicals, herbicides, pesticides, and things that basically destroyed it, right? Anyone that's ever taken antibiotics, things like that basically damage your gut. This is basically what you are dealing with, and your job, when it comes to optimizing your microbiome, is to basically transform it into a nutrient-rich type of soil, because that's the only way that you can grow probiotics. Okay, I'm going to go into that a little bit later here. Let me play this.
So here's a couple of soil samples that were taken literally 25 feet apart. This one was from my pastures that have been managed holistically for 25 years. This is from a neighbor's, 25 feet apart. Nothing separating but a fence, 25 years of holistic management versus degrading industrialized farming. It's amazing. This was over 5% organic matter. This one is less than 0.5% organic matter. To give you a sense of what that means, 1% organic matter will hold an inch of rain. So this land can absorb a 5-inch rain event. This land can only absorb a 1/2 inch. So if it rains 5 inches, 4.5 inches rushes down to the Gulf of Mexico.
Okay, I hope that you just caught that, because this is one of the most important concepts that I hope you understand about what is it that I do. So what he said was that the bad soil can only absorb so much rain, about 1/2 inch of rain, maybe an inch at most. The good soil can actually absorb 5 inches of rain. So if you're in the group, one of the first things that I talk about is hydration. Okay. And there are levels to hydration. When it comes to understanding water, water is simple. It's H2O, right? Well, that's just the beginning, okay? As a beer brewer, let me stop the share here. So as a beer brewer, you know, again, I have books on yeast for brewing purposes, a book on water, okay? It's a simple topic, right? H2O. It's not a simple topic at all. Hydration is not a simple topic at all. Here's a book on water that I highly recommend everyone here, you know, reads. It's called Your Body's Many Cries for Water. And I don't know how to pronounce this author's last name, but I'll put it up here if the camera can actually focus. But let me read off a little bit on this, because one of the first things that I teach is, you know, hydration. And hydration, as you just saw in the video and heard in the video, if your gut is damaged, your gut can only absorb so much water, right? So one of the things that I talk about in the group is, hey, minimum you should be drinking 2 quarts of water, but that's only the beginning, because that only basically begins to tell you what is your body doing. Is your body actually absorbing the water that you're drinking? Okay, that's basically the kind of stuff that I help people with, is determine, you know, like, how hydrated are you? And if you're not getting, you know, full hydration, how can we, you know, improve it? Okay. So here's chapter 7, page 87. It says, you know, higher blood cholesterol. So it says, higher blood cholesterol is a sign that the cells of the body have developed a defense mechanism against the osmotic force of the blood that keeps drawing water out through the cell membranes, or the concentrated blood cannot release sufficient water to go through the cell membrane and maintain normal cell functions. Cholesterol is a natural clay that, when poured in the gaps of the cell membrane, makes the cell wall impervious to the passage of water. Its excessive manufacture and deposition in the cell membrane is part of the natural design for the protection of the living cells against dehydration. So in other words, what this is essentially saying is that the body uses cholesterol as a protective mechanism towards dehydration. And one of the things that I learned, you know, throughout the years, especially as I, you know, have been, you know, working with people and helping them optimize their microbiome, is that dehydration is one of the biggest problems. And this is the reason why, and, you know, and I was actually asked about this earlier, you know, because this talks about the relationship between dehydration and higher levels of cholesterol and blood pressure, blood sugar levels, all of that thing, how they're all related. But again, this is just one angle of it, one aspect. To me, like, I'm looking at the microbiome, just like I showed you, just like I shared in the videos. How much water your body absorbs is a factor in how well hydrated you are, because if you're drinking a gallon of water a day, but your gut is damaged, then your body may not be absorbing that water. Okay. And that's where optimizing your microbiome comes into play. So this is why I tell people, is like, you can be doing everything that I do, yet it's not working for you. And the reason being is that you have to look at the quality of water that you're drinking, the minerals, the pH, the temperature, the bacteria, and the environment. Okay. And if your environment isn't right, then we need to work and fix that. Okay. So let me know if that makes sense, because this is like this is the best that I can describe the difference between what a bad microbiome looks like and what a good microbiome looks like, and what I've been doing that nobody that I ever went to, there's no doctor, no functional medicine practitioner, no naturopath, like, this stuff is coming from brewing books, farming practices, and my experience in brewing beer, me turning myself into a guinea pig. I've been basically researching this for the last 10 years now. Okay, so I'm not a doctor. I'm not here to treat, cure, prevent any disease, but I've been researching this for about 10 years because I needed to fix my own gut issues. and I'm just self-educated on the topic, and I can tell that the best information, this is where it's come from. Okay, so let me know if it makes sense. And I'm going to go back to this drawing here. So optimizing your microbiome. What were things that I did? Well, as you saw, drinking more water alone doesn't necessarily hydrate you. Okay, because if your gut doesn't absorb it, okay, if the cells of your body don't absorb it, if you have, high cholesterol levels or things like that, all of those play a role and they play a factor on it. And so those were some of the things that I had to figure out. In my case, I was dehydrated for two reasons. One was that I didn't drink enough water. Two, I was a beer brewer, so I actually drank a lot of beer, and alcohol dehydrates you, right? So those were some of the reasons that, I was dehydrated. And this is where things started to make sense to me. Okay, I started to actually pay attention to the quality of water that I was drinking, because as a brewer, I will look at water and say, okay, when I brew beer, I can't just use any kind of water, right? If I use city water, well, city water is treated with either chlorine, chloramines, right? Some of these pesticide residue can be in the water, right? I think Christina posted a picture earlier today about the kind of stuff that she pulls using her water distilling machine, right? All the toxic waste that can be in your water, okay, all of that's what's going to add to the soil of your gut, right? All that water is basically what affects the soil outside. And so for me, it made sense. As a brewer, I started to think, okay, if I can't brew beer with this water because it affects yeast, yeast is a probiotic, right? Brewer's yeast is a probiotic. I thought to myself, it just made sense. Like, why would I be drinking that water if it's going to affect probiotics? Okay, if it affects a probiotic, like even if it's just the yeast, the brewer's yeast that it affects, but it affects pretty much all probiotics, why would I drink that? So it made sense to me that, hey, just like I use clean water to brew beer, I need to use clean water to hydrate myself. It's a simple concept, right? But a lot of people don't get it. I see a lot of people drinking out of plastic bottles, right? Plastic bottles will have plasticizers and other chemicals that are used, right? Plastic is a byproduct of, the oil refinery. So you have all kind of petroleum and residue, made that goes into it, and all of that stuff leaches into water. Water actually absorbs things, right? And so that's the kind of stuff that if you don't clean up your water, you can't clean up your gut. You can't clean up the soil. And this is what optimizing your microbiome is. For me, it's basically I started to realize that, hey, there's little things that I started to do to clean up my act, to restructure the soil, to restructure my gut, the environment, the microbiome. It started with clean water. It started with adding minerals. It started by making sure that the pH was a proper pH, making sure that the temperature was right. And that basically is what creates an environment for me to be able to grow probiotics. Now, there's also another side to it, which is if you have bad bacteria, which, more than likely, if you have any kind of autoimmune conditions, that to me, that's basically my own definition of an autoimmune condition, is having some sort of bad bacteria colonizing your gut. Now you have to go and remove that. And that's going to be, that's really the biggest challenge that that everyone's going to have to go through. Is the biggest challenge that I had to go through, removing some of this bad stuff that was within me. But this is basically, once I remove this stuff out of me, this is when I basically got my life back. This is when my energy levels went through the roof. This is when I no longer felt a lot of these symptoms that I was feeling before. Okay. And this is basically what I do. So if you've seen some of these success stories of, others in the group that are, that are basically experiencing energy levels, this is basically what I'm walking them through. is I'm teaching them, how to hydrate themselves. And it's not just drinking water. It's not just adding minerals to water, but it's also making sure that the body is absorbing it, right? And so this has to, I have to look at, their diet. I have to look at what is their body's digesting, what are they not digesting. It's an entire process. And if you're interested in going through this process, let me know. And here's the thing, I don't work with everyone, and the reason being is because what I teach isn't a diet. I don't sell supplements. Okay, and so I want to be very clear about what is it that that you're going to be going through if you decide to work with me. And I guess to really illustrate, I want to read off from Proverbs chapter 12, verse 11, which says, "He who tills his own land has food in plenty, but he who follows idle pursuits is a fool." That's essentially how I see myself as far as what I teach and what I do, is that every day I do something to take care of the soil, to take care of my gut. Okay. There's a lot of people who don't do anything. Don't drink enough water, don't care about what you eat, right? You just don't watch. And there's a huge gap between someone who is basically looking for say for example, a weight loss shake or some sort of pill that's going to magically change all of this. That's not how it works. Every day I wake up and I hydrate first thing in the morning, right? I drink clean water, I use distilled water, I use minerals. My water doesn't touch plastic. When I say I use distilled water, oftentimes people hear that and they go to the store and they buy distilled water that comes in a plastic gallon jug. That's bad. Okay. Don't do that. So these are little details that matter a lot. I do that. I do a gratitude journal after I hydrate. That matters too. Okay. And that's a little bit more advanced, but it's basically something that's part of making sure that you understand how your body can be in a sympathetic versus a parasympathetic mode, meaning, sympathetic is basically when, your body's in a fight or flight type of mode, versus parasympathetic when it's relaxed, calm. That's when it digests. Okay. And if you're not able to get into that state when you're eating foods, okay, that food, if it's not properly digested, that food can basically create an environment that ruins the environment, the soil, the gut, the gut wall lining, because if it sits and it starts to rot, you can have abnormal fermentation. And so that's where gas begins to show up, right? If you have gas, bloating, constipation, it's food getting stuck in your gut. That gas, it's basically fermentation. And so that can give growth to, what's called SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, yeast overgrowth. That's basically what is going on, with that. And so the way to fix that isn't by taking a supplement. Okay, you're not going to kill these bad bacteria. You're definitely not going to grow probiotics in a toxic environment. And this is why what I teach actually works, because I work with a lot of people who, they go to a functional medicine practitioner or a naturopath or whoever they go to. And I work with people that sometimes, pay like these people like $7,000-8,000, and I'm correcting so many of their mistakes, because here's what people experience when they go through through this. And I do like when people go to functional medicine practitioners and other people like that, because it tells me that you're looking to get better. And that's the biggest thing, is that you want to actually make these changes. Okay. I'm not here to convince anyone that this works. If you need convincing, watch some of the success stories, watch some of my other videos. This stuff, like what I teach, is how to treat the body right. But here's what I see happens is that people go to doctors or whatever, and their tools are basically, they do some sort of, they do their lab testings or whatever. They don't really pay attention to how you feel. They just want to know like the lab numbers. And then people go into this roller coaster of, you know, upping your dose and lowering it and upping it. And, you know, sometimes people feel good for a couple of months and then they just feel worse after that. Um, they go through all of that and then they, you know, they give up on conventional doctors. They seek naturopaths and all these other doctors, and they think that they're going to feel better because, you know, they have different testings that are more natural, and sometimes they do like uncover, you know, certain things that do help, but their tools for helping this usually boils down to either diet, which could be either autoimmune paleo diet, a ketogenic diet, low FODMAP type of diet, and then a ton of supplements. Now, the difference between them and what I teach is that what they're trying to do is basically grow probiotics, but they don't understand that you have to fix the environment. Okay, so oftentimes people will be given probiotics, and then, you know, if you get a decent, you know, functional medicine practitioner, they'll say, hey, you need prebiotics, right? Like that's like their big thing. Like if you're not taking prebiotics, you don't know what you're doing. But here's the thing, okay? If you have bad bacteria in your gut, prebiotics is food for bacteria. It's what it is. So yes, it's good to take prebiotics with probiotics because it's supposed to feed the good bacteria. But if you have bad bacteria in your gut, you're feeding the bad bacteria. Okay, and this is what happens oftentimes is that people are trying to figure out everything that I teach here and do, and you don't know the order of things, and oftentimes you end up making things worse by doing some of the things out of order, which is why I tell people go through the unit section and just go in order one step at a time, because otherwise you're very likely to make mistakes, you know, trying to go through the process. And so for me, here's basically what I had to do was I had to clean up the environment first. Okay, just like you saw, you know, soil could have like herbicides, pesticides, and like all of this residue that ruins your gut. I had to get rid of that. I had to clean up. I had to detox. I had to basically go and completely restructure my gut flora. And in order for me to do that, there's no one single supplement that I took. Okay, there's I did Ayurvedic herbs, I did green juices, I did fasting, I did, you know, ketogenic diet, I did, you know, you guys have seen some of the foods that I eat, from fermented foods, kvass, you know, sauerkraut, kombucha, all of that in combination are things that I basically use to change the pH, to detoxify, to remove residue. And this is different for everyone, because this is where what I do is I don't go by lab testing. I go by, what do you feel? And this is why the only people that I work with are people that I feel like I understand what's going on with their microbiome, because that's how I can tell, like, okay, here's what we need to do. We need to hydrate you. We need to get these nutrients that you might be deficient on. We need to get your pH levels, you know, to a normal range, right? These are the things that I begin to do. And, you know, by the way, if you're interested in going through this, if you've gone through the videos in the unit section and you're doing the hydration protocols and you're feeling a difference, I know there's like what I share here in the group, a lot of people can see so much improvement just by doing this alone. And after you go through hydration, okay, vitamin D, which again, a lot of people are doing vitamin D wrong. If you're taking any kind of vitamin D supplement that measures vitamin D in IUs, that doesn't work. Okay, follow our process. Fermented cod liver oil plus butter oil. Do the coenzyme Q10. That's the main nutrient that your body needs and uses to make energy, right? The Ayurvedic herbs, that's basically one of the first things that I started to use to clean up my body. If you do those things, that's going to give you a baseline and basically put you in a, you know, it's going to give me the information that I need so that I know where to go from there. Because if you do those and you're not experiencing more energy, there's something else going on with you, and that's where we need to troubleshoot. If you do experience energy, right, there are things that I look for that basically tell me what's the next step for you. And so you have a couple options. You can go through the free training videos in the group, and for many people, like, that's most of what you're looking for. It'll give you energy. You'll see an improvement in your sleep. But for anyone that wants to go beyond that, okay, and you want to actually improve your gut health and optimize your microbiome, then we would need to basically sit down and go over what's going on with you specifically, so that I can actually go in and give you a plan to take. Okay, and if you're interested in that, you can go ahead and leave a comment below this video. Just say optimize, and I'll go ahead and reach out to you. We'll connect, and we'll sit down and we'll go over what's going on with you, what is that you're looking to accomplish. And if I feel like I can help you, then we can talk about what that looks like. But this is basically what I do and what I teach. It's optimizing your microbiome. And again, it's not by doing a supplement. It's by basically creating a series of habits that, just like I said, every day we are designed to work our land, our soil, our gut. And the people who don't do this, these are the people that as they grow older, their health deteriorates. Okay, chronic disease as people age, it's the reason why that happens isn't because of age. It's because people don't know how to take care of their bodies. They don't know how to hydrate, right? They don't know what foods to eat, right? Oftentimes people like come to me and they tell me like, oh, I eat healthy. Okay, what's your definition of eating healthy? And oftentimes it's lean meats and veggies. That's not healthy eating. Okay, and I used to think the same. I used to think that, hey, if I eat turkey, right, that's lean meat, I'll eat chicken. And there's so much misinformation out there that, the more that I see this stuff, like, it now makes sense why we are seeing so many people that have gut related issues, why I wasn't producing hormones, right? Hormones are produced, they're primarily derived from cholesterol. How many people look for how much cholesterol is in their diet? Not many. I know that it wasn't until I started to learn about producing hormones that I actually started to shop, buy foods based on the amount of cholesterol. Like if I look at eggs, I will see and say, okay, this has 185 milligrams of cholesterol. And if I find something that has higher than that, 200 milligrams, I'll get the one that has more cholesterol. That's almost the opposite of what you're going to hear from a doctor. Salt. Oftentimes people are told that, okay, you gotta cut out salt. In my world, if you use the right salt, you need good salt. Okay, you want to cut out the bad salt for sure, because if it has no minerals, that's what makes it bad. Table salt has no minerals. I think that's poison. Good salt has minerals, right? What do you need? Water, minerals. Okay, I use a lot of salt. I use a lot of minerals because that's what the body needs. That's what we need to grow. Vitamin D. It's a pro-hormone. Okay, if your body's not producing hormones, there's a lot of people that have low vitamin D. Vitamin D is actually it's directly correlated to the strength of your immune system. If your vitamin D levels are low, your immune system is weak. The higher your vitamin D levels, the stronger your immune system. Now, there are people who have normal levels of vitamin D, but you don't necessarily have a strong immune system, and that's because there's other things that affect that, right? pH, temperature, if you have bad bacteria, all of that stuff matters. So these are all the things that I look at. And when you really look at it and start to understand, like, what is it that makes this work, is that your gut, right, your probiotics, that's what digests food for you. So the reason why people don't have energy when they have gut issues is, number one, water is one of the main ingredients that the body uses to produce energy. So dehydration is one of them. Second is you have amino acids that the body uses for certain functions. So for example, if you eat, if you eat protein, whether it's beef, chicken, or turkey, if you think that this is what is healthier, which is not, and I'll cover that in a different video. But suppose that you eat it, it's not that it's unhealthy, but you eat that. Number one, if these are coming from a conventional type of farm, you saw what's in the soil. Okay, that's what you're eating. That's what's going to end up in your gut. So the first step is, what's the source of your food? If you get this from regenerative farming practices, right? Grass-fed, grass-finished type of beef, pasture-raised chickens, turkeys, and things like that. These are going to be more mineralized, nutrient-rich foods. So that's like the first step. Second is, when they go down into your gut, you got to be able to digest, because a protein is nothing more than a chain of amino acids, and digestion is nothing more than breaking those down into smaller chains. So you get an amino acid like tryptophan or tyrosine. Okay, these amino acids are what the body uses to produce hormones like serotonin, dopamine, melatonin, which is the sleeping hormone. It's also used to produce hair, right? So if you're not digesting food properly, and again, if your body's not absorbing it, okay, so you saw that bad soil can only absorb up to like half an inch of water. A lot of foods and nutrients are water soluble. Okay, others are fat soluble, but there's a lot that are water soluble. So if your body's only absorbing half an inch of water, you're only absorbing half an inch of nutrients. If your soil can absorb 5 inches, you can absorb way more nutrients, right? So now you can have, deficiencies like iron, selenium, manganese, copper, zinc. All of those are what the body uses to produce and grow hair, grow thick hair. So people that, your hair's falling off, guess what? You're nutrient deficient. You're not digesting proteins properly. So you're not getting these amino acids, plus your body's just not absorbing it, and therefore your body can't produce hair. That's when the leaves start to fall off. That's when your hair starts to fall off, right? That's when your body doesn't have the nutrients that it needs to produce energy. So as you begin to optimize your microbiome, you improve the quality of water, your minerals, the pH, the temperature, you start to grow good probiotics in your gut. Now you're able to digest food, so you can eat any of these. Your body actually gets amino acids out of them. Now your body can actually make melatonin. So now you can actually, when you go to bed, you actually fall asleep. Okay, how would you like to go to bed and actually fall asleep almost on demand? Okay, and stay asleep. Stay asleep, have a deep dream, wake up, and feel like you got restorative sleep. This is how I'm helping people do it, is basically I gotta get them to digest food better. And it starts out by changing their food source, making sure that their body is hydrated, making sure that they have the minerals that they need, the proper pH. All of this is basically what optimizing your microbiome is all about. And this is why when people go through the process, they start to get more energy, sleep better, and ultimately feel better, because their body's actually getting the nutrients that it needs. So I hope that this made sense, and I hope that this really paints a picture of what is it that you're up against. If you're tired all the time, if you have brain fog, if you can't fall asleep, this is what you're up against. And again, I don't know if anyone else that's been teaching this, or even less able to actually guide people through it, which is why, for those of you who don't know, I've been researching this for about 10 years or so. And I started sharing this information about 7 to 8 years ago. For the longest time, I was just sharing, a lot of the information on my YouTube channel, on my website, and even on my fan page. Last year, I was doing daily live videos, just basically walking people through everything. And I just knew that I had something special here, something that that I needed first for myself. But once I figured out that, hey, this doesn't just work for me, but this is really for everyone and anyone, I decided that I needed to go out and do this. So last May, due to this whole pandemic thing, I was terminated. And I think that was a blessing in disguise, because it really made me look at, what I was doing, what I wanted to do. And I took a leap of faith and I decided to go into this full time, which means that I am now going to basically be working with, people and just, doing this as a, as a career. And I'm very grateful for everyone that, that basically jumped on board when I first started my coaching business, and you're seeing the results. And it's, it's the reason why I'm excited, because I've been sharing this information for years, but I now realize how hard it is for someone who doesn't have this, brewing background to implement this stuff, which is why, I'm making myself available to guide more people. So I am working on, on my programs to be able to help more people, because right now, I'm working very closely with people, so my time is very limited, but I am working on making it so that I can work with more people. So that being said, um, stay tuned for an announcement as far as, some changes that I'm going to be making to, my programs, so that I can, be able to help more people, and also make it easier, more, easier for other people to, get started and get to see what it's like to, go through this process. But in the meantime, if this makes sense, if you've watched the videos, if you're, if you're maybe going through some of the things that I share in the group, whether it's the hydration challenge, the vitamin D, the coenzyme Q10, the Ayurvedic herbs, and you're seeing results, and you want to basically go to the next level, and you want to like learn more, what I am putting together, for, just so you guys know, it's not a diet, it's not a supplement. It's basically, I call it Beer Diet Project. And it's a project because we're researching, and like, I'm still learning a lot about this, and I'm still finding better ways to treat my gut, better ways to optimize my microbiome. And so as a group, as a community, we're basically all going out and, we're doing, and we're changing things. Like, as far as I am concerned, there is no solution out there that, that can match this. Okay, there just isn't. And so I want to be able to, help people go through this, and also make it so that, the people that go through the program are able to basically turn around and help other people. Okay, so I'm going to be, working very hard on that. So, again, stay tuned for some of that. Again, we're barely getting started with this, this, even though I've been sharing this for years, my coaching program really just started back in May. A little bit before that, I was doing, a little bit of, coaching when I was working full time. I was taking a little bit of spare time to work with some people. But, as far as like going all in, it's just been a couple of months, and it's been great. So I'm truly grateful for everyone that's participated, and I really look forward for other people to join us and help us, research, this stuff and experience some of these results. So that's pretty much all that I've got for today. Let me go and check in on the comments and see what you guys got here. Jessica, how's it going? You're here a bit late. It's actually researching the gut flora and magnesium. It's big. Magnesium activates like over 300 enzymatic activities, which is a way of saying, enzymes. Basically, what enzymes do is they break down or build, different things, from, breaking down starches, that's enzymes. Breaking down protein into amino acids, that's enzymes. When your body builds proteins, that's enzymes. Enzymes are basically what, do a lot of things for us. Fruit rehydrated me. Miriam, I don't have to wear chapstick anymore. Going hard on the watermelon juice every morning. Yeah, fruits, if they're from the right source, that's basically what you're getting out of, out of fruits. Good fruit is mineralized, okay, and it's water rich. if it's coming from good soil, right? Everything applies for fruits and plants. Good quality water, minerals, proper pH, temperature. If you're buying fruits that are conventional, the pesticide residue, the lack of minerals, all of that stuff is what's going to basically damage your gut. And so that's what makes this thing make so much sense once you start to understand what I understand, and you understand these 5 things: quality of water, minerals, pH, temperature, and bacteria. That's literally all that I look at. Krista, wow, that is insane how huge a difference in the type of soil's ability to hold water. Yeah, and if you look up and research, like there's parts of the country that get flooded because of the farms around that the soil don't absorb water. And so now you have all these, floodings happening, water runoffs that wouldn't happen if these farms would follow regenerative farming practices, because the soil will actually be able to hold the water. So I mean, again, this stuff, like the more that I look into it, the more that I realize that, that we need this stuff. We need to understand it, not just for us, but for the environment. And, I mean, I can go into a rant with that. Noelia, you said gallon distilled is no good. What should we use? So I have a water distilling machine. I use a Steam Pure, and it's a stainless steel machine. And so it just goes from the machine into a glass container. So this is my glass container here. So it never touches plastic. And, the only reason why I point that out is because oftentimes, just like with everything else, like minerals, vitamin D, pretty much every food that I eat, you don't find it at the store, not the local vitamin shop. You don't find it at Walmart or any of these grocery stores, but that's what people do because that's all that they know. So they hear me say, oh, I use distilled water. So what do people do is they go to the convenience store and they buy distilled water, and that's not good. Okay, that's a bad type of water. And that's what makes, teaching this sometimes a little bit complicated, is that a lot of things that I say, people think that they're doing something right, and they're not. Magnesium, there's all kinds of different types of magnesium, right? The one that I use, I mean, I have this one here right now, the CMDs, which are the new minerals. The other ones that I was using was the Ojo brand that says, ionic magnesium. Oftentimes people think that, they're taking some other type of magnesium, and it's just not the same because the body doesn't absorb it the same. Vitamin D is another big one. Whenever I ask people like, hey, are you taking any vitamin D? If they can be there on prescription that, their doctor gives them, 10,000 IUs, 25, 50,000 IUs. And here's the thing. It's like, when people come through my program, like within a month or 2, their vitamin D levels start going up. And there's people that are taking crazy amounts of vitamin D that are on prescription, and their levels don't budge at all. And that's because all vitamins are created through the fermentation process, which means you need probiotics for these vitamins to be created. And if you have gut issues, well, you don't have the probiotics. How do you get probiotics into your gut? Fermented foods and beverages, right? That's what we use to make these fermented foods and beverages. That's why, what do I use for vitamin D? Fermented cod liver oil, right? It's a fermented food. It's not a supplement, it's a food. And when people start to understand this, like it just, makes so much sense. All right. That is, I see a couple more comments, but I can't see them on my desktop. So let me try reading. We're a little bit over the hour now, so thank you everyone who's still here. Let me just go through. I'll answer any last questions and then I'll call it a day. All right. All right. Okay, I can't see the other comments, so I'll just go back after I get off and I'll reply. But thank you everyone. Again, if you're interested in working with me, you want to learn more about how to optimize your microbiome, go ahead and type optimize below, and that way I'll know that you're interested. So I'll reach out and, we can connect and, chat further. Other than that, if you need more information or you want to learn more about how all of this works, go to the units tab, watch those videos, watch them in order, watch the success stories. There's a lot of good information in there. And I hope that you start to implement the information, because there's a lot of good information in here that will really get you off the ground. Anything beyond that, it's going to vary so much depending on what your current diet is. You know, if you've had other things like, you know, I know a lot of people that I deal with oftentimes will have their gallbladder removed, or, you know, if you have weird things that I may not know about, that's where I need to find out, like, hey, you know, if you're like, if you have like way crazy conditions, I may not work with you. Not because I don't think that this can't help. I know that this helps pretty much everyone, but mostly because usually like when people are too advanced, they rely too much on me. They put way too much responsibility on me. And again, I think the people that I like working with best are people that have already tried. They already know that, hey, gut health is where it's at, and you just need the knowledge. You just need someone to actually guide you and give you a step-by-step, you know, type of process. That's where I can help you. Okay, if you already know that this is the solution for you, that's where I can help you. So go ahead and type optimize. I'll reach out to you. And that is all for today. Thank you everyone for being here, and I'll talk to you guys later. See ya.